Hey Wargamers, today I want to answer a question I see posted almost every day, and that is, how do you start T'au? What are the best things to get, and what are the things to avoid? I've done this video a few different times in the past, but we've gotten to the point where the game has shifted enough that I think it's time that we do this video again. So this is my 2019 version of how to start T'au. When I've done this video in the past, I've only given you one answer, but today I'm going to give you three, and that's going to depend on how you approach the hobby and your experience level. So before we get into this, really think about what are you trying to get out of T'au? Are you just entering 40K and want to experience the army kind of for the first time? Or are you a 40K veteran and you really just want to get the most bang out of your army that you can? Depending on your answer, you're probably going to want to go with a different army list. So let's jump into it. So the first option is for you guys that are just entering the hobby, that you just are interested in 40K. You want to get a feel for the army. You want to get a feel for the hobby. You really aren't sure if this is something that you're going to love or hate. You just are curious and you want to start with T'au. So if that's you, I think the first option really is do whatever you want. I know it's not a super satisfying answer, but I think it's an important one. A lot of times, we go into these situations where we ask, how do I start this? And then someone, bang, gives you an answer, and it doesn't necessarily work out the way you think it would, right? You give someone a net list, you give someone a prescription for a list of models, and they're not really, that person's cup of tea. They don't really click with that person. And I think really the best way to get into the hobby, to get into any army, is to start by buying models that you think are cool. Doesn't matter if they're good, doesn't matter if they're bad, just get models that you think are cool. Because at the core of 40K, it's about the models, right? So if you're not into the models, if you don't enjoy the army, how it looks or anything like that, you're not going to enjoy playing them. And so if you are just entering this hobby, start with models that look cool to you, that you think would be fun to paint, would be fun to assemble, that you can, think of cinematic events in your brain to contextualize the battle with. If you are playing with models that you think are cool, you're going to have a fun time. If you don't play with models that you think are cool, you're not going to have a good time. So plain and simple, if you're just getting into 40K, pick a model that looks fun, go with that, build your army piece by piece based on your experience, figure out what things work for you and which things don't, and which things you enjoy playing with and things that you don't. I think that's really the best way to get into the hobby. Totally ignore any of the net list talk or anything like that. Just go with something that feels right to you. Now, let's say you're somebody that is pretty familiar with 40K, you're familiar with T'au, and you really just want a good, solid army to start off, to start learning the mechanics, to figure out how they play, their strengths and weaknesses, that sort of thing. But you want to do all of that without, spending a ton of money, something that's cost effective. That's our second option. So this is a list that can be built just with 2 start collecting boxes and then additional Riptide. So it's a Cadre Fireblade, which you would need to convert from the start collecting box, but hey, that's part of the hobby, right, is converting. An Ethereal on Hover Drone, which is stock out of the start collecting box, and then an XVA Commander with 4 Cyclic Ion Blasters and Iridium Armor. Those Cyclic Ion Blasters aren't going to come with the box, so you're going to have to do some proxying, but hey, this is about figuring out the army, maybe doing some slight conversions, that sort of thing. So I'm not too concerned about that. You'll find something that works for you. But 4 Cyclic Ion Blasters on XVA Commander, I think, is a good component to this list. Primarily because it allows you the flexibility of the commander, and it also introduces you to several key rules. So these different HQ units are all included in this list in order to introduce you to key mechanics of the T'au Empire. We have Marker Lights and Volley Fire as part of the Cadre Fireblade. We have the Invocation of the Elements as part of the Ethereal and his leadership bubble. And then we have Master of War from the commander. All these are really critical things that you have to understand if you're going to play T'au. And so this army is designed to expose you to those things. Not necessarily in the most optimized way, but in a way that you can, get a feel for the army without having to spend a ton of money. Moving on to troops, we have a bunch of Fire Warriors. They have Marker Lights as well. So again, we're building on that Marker Light mechanic. We have a unit of Crisis Suits. These are going to be Crisis Suits with a Cyclic Ion Blaster and 2 Fusion Blasters each. And you could switch that around. They're the same points. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, unit of Crisis Suits with some shield drones. This gives you exposure to the shield drone mechanic as well as to mantis striking via crisis suits. And then we have a Riptide that is going to get you familiar with Riptides and their slew of mechanics. So Riptides are still a staple of the T'au Army, and so you really do want to have some exposure to that. If you're starting out, you want to know how they work and their strengths and weaknesses. Both the Riptide and the Crisis Suit unit are critical because they give you basically the bulk of your firepower, but they also allow you to develop your skills in positioning drones and using savior protocols. In addition to that, we have a unit of shield drones as well. And all of these drones that we're talking about, this entire thing can be built based on the drones supplied in the start collecting boxes. So again, you're using 2 start collecting boxes and a box of Riptides. I'm not going to go over the actual price of this because, if you buy it from GW, it's going to be one price. If you buy it off eBay, it's going to be a little bit cheaper. If you buy it at your game store, it might be somewhere in between. So, basically this is kind of a middle of the road price thing, right? But overall, I think it exposes you to a lot of really good mechanics. Now, if you are a person that is very familiar with 40K, you want an army that's going to bring the pain right away and is going to be a basis for pretty much any army you build after this. I have a heavy hitters list for you as well. And we can do this by spending a lot more money over the cost-effective option. In order to build this, you're going to need to buy a Cadre Fireblade, Commander Shadowsun, 2 boxes of strike teams, 3 boxes of broadsides, and a Riptide. The list is a Cadre Fireblade, Commander Shadowsun. The reason why we include Shadowsun here is because she is a more efficient platform for Master of War compared to the cost-efficient option. It's going to be something that you're really going to use in all your games going forward, whereas the Crisis Suits and the Crisis Commander we're not going to be using. So this is something that's a little bit more pointed to be optimized or netlisty even. Yep, Commander Shadowsun. Then we have 3 units of Fire Warriors, again with marker lights. For Elites, we have that same Riptide again. But then the biggest difference in this list is that we have a unit of broadsides with shield drones. Those shield drones, the shield drones in this list can all be supplied based on the models that you're purchasing already, so you don't need to buy a special unit of drones or anything like that. But in doing so, we're really getting a hold of the Master of War ability by using Cao Yun and also the stratagems. By having Shadowsun in your army, you're much more stratagem oriented with this list. You really are going to be using things like command and control node a lot more. And of course, you're going to be focusing on your battle suits and savior protocols and stratagems a lot. So this list is designed to do, basically everything that the cost-effective list did, but do it stronger and more intensely. So this is something that you're really going to see as a basis for any type of competitive list going forward, whereas some elements of the cost-effective list are not going to be making an appearance in a competitive-minded list going forward. So that's a big difference. You're spending more with this list, but you're also getting a list that's going to be punching heavier or harder than the cost-effective list would. So those are 3 different options. Like I said, if you are just getting into the hobby, I think you should just do what feels good to you. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more cost-effective, just buy a couple start collecting boxes and a Riptide. And then if you are looking for something that's really going to punch hard, go with this slew of models that we just mentioned. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If these lists sound good to you or not, what would you change? What would you stay the same? And if you've used lists like these as you started out, I'd love to hear your perspective. So thanks for watching, and of course, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. This channel is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there and the associated Discord channel. Special thanks to Aaron Fox, Shifty, Jim Bob, Scott Heater, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Tao Oswell, Zach Brooks, Stephen Cohen, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Zealous Brimstone, Evan Wells, Benjamin, Julian Peck, Giovanni DiMaggio, and Chris Kessler.